I don't know whether you were listening, but I have a key takeouts that I can give for you from this session. What a powerful session, by the way. Education is the key that unlocks a brighter future for all. Therefore, we call for equal education. We call for equality for all the girls and for all the women around the world, and that is Tawakola Kama. Such profound words indeed. And now the last takeout, I want to give it to you. And I'm going to call your cities. If you know, just wave a hand. We have a clarion call from this session, and it is quite simple. It says, from the streets of Konyo Konyo in South Sudan, to Quito in Ecuador, to Paraisópolis in Sao Paulo, Brazil, to Soweto, South Africa, from Paris, France, from Copenhagen, Denmark, from St. Gallen, Switzerland, from Accra, Ghana. Find a girl, find a sister, stand with the girl child, stand with the woman, and together, let us change the world. That is the clarion call for all of you. And now allow me to flip the script. And I'm going to call Claudine Schmuck, who's the Director of Global Contact, as we move into the next session, which is titled Closing the Gap, Innovative Solution for Addressing the STEM Pipeline Program. Allow me to welcome in the session, Claudine Schmuck. Thank you very much.
Where we face unprecedented global challenges, the importance of innovation is more crucial than it has ever been to identify solutions and enable progresses. In this particular context, it is clear that an inclusive STEM workforce where women are equally involved is indeed a key enabler. Yet, from education to employment, the proportion of women who drop out of STEM remains high. Biases, unequal access to STEM education provides for a proportion of women among STEM graduates in the world which for the past 20 years hasn't made any progress. It is stuck at 30%. And of course, this creates the problem for the proportion of women in STEM jobs, where, in fact, the situation is not better. Because in addition to the pipeline problems, there are sometimes biases in hiring and promotion, sometimes lack of support, which create a difficult environment. The focus of this session is therefore to identify innovative and, most importantly, impactful solutions for addressing the STEM pipeline problem. It begins with improving the situation of women at work, fostering an inclusive environment that empowers them to thrive and move forward. These successful gender balance policies that we'll be talking about are a key element to help to improve the attractiveness of STEM for younger women. So to discuss this important topic, I am glad to welcome on board Anabel Diaz, Vice President, RGM for EMEA Uber, and I suggest we applaud. John Eland, CEO, EMEA Stack Infrastructure, again. Welcome on board. Kathryn Dolan, Group Executive Vice President, Human Resources, Bureau Veritas. Welcome, Kathryn. Frédérique Legreves, Présidente de STM Microelectronics France, Executive Vice President Europe, and because it's more than that, Executive Vice President Europe and France Public Affairs, STM Microelectronics. And last but not least, Raj Verma, Chief Diversity, Culture and Experience Officer at Sanofi. So, Kathryn, let me turn to you first and right away begin with the debate on how to better empower and retain women in STEM jobs. So we know that Bureau Veritas is actually very much involved in enabling gender balance through the implementation of a certificate, which is called the GEES. GEES stands for Gender, Equality, European and International Standard. So could you share with us some of your experience about how it implies, and how it benefits to women in STEM?
Thank you. So Bureau Veritas is a global leader in testing, inspection and certification around health, safety, environment, ESG. And we're seeing an increasing trend of organisations using standards like ISO or JACE to really signal their commitment and progress to gender diversity, in particular women in STEM. So the way that this works is it's open to any organisation, any industry sector, but the focus is very much on really understanding where you are today, your strengths, where you see weaknesses, but around gender pay practices, gender policy, work-life balance, and general awareness and education within the broader workforce. So what we see is that organisations that we partner with are using this type of certification in a very progressive way, because not only does it sign a commitment to applicants, to your employees about your commitment as an organisation to gender equality, but also a roadmap, a plan. It's a very progressive way of continuing to improve KPIs and progress in terms of raising gender equality.
Right.
One of the lessons that our observations is that the organisations that are most mature really understand that how women self-perceive themselves, their main self-identification, is a really important lever to accelerate STEM. So, do I see myself first and foremost as an engineer? So that happens to be female, and therefore, how do we really leverage their fundamental view of equality in a technical profession? Or they see themselves as real ambassadors for women in technical professions, and how they can become broader role models, particularly in encouraging younger people into STEM professions.
Well, thanks a lot, Kathryn, for these insights on GEES. Now, let me turn to Anabel Diaz from Uber. Anabel, we know that since the STEM fields tend to be male-dominated, right? We know that. Creating a working environment that makes the minority of women feel well accepted and listened to, it's crucial, right? So how do you succeed in to create the good conditions for women in STEM to thrive at Uber?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I would like to start saying, well, something pretty obvious probably, but there is not one silver bullet, and things do not change overnight just because you implement one thing in a company. So particularly the trajectory at Uber is more than 8 years or so, really focused on this, and probably since 2017, we start to see results of the multiple efforts that compound over each other. Frankly, the results are very encouraging. The percentage of women in our workplace increased 7%, and roughly the numbers are around 43, 44 in the general, 36% in leadership, and really a high percentage of our employees that express themselves, that the environment allows them to, be their own selves, basically. So, to your question, what are we specifically doing? I would probably call out 2 key systems or key processes. The performance process, how you evaluate people. I know this is a theme that has been hammered for years in organizations, but it's fundamental to be serious about it. Particularly, one thing that I want to call out is in every performance review room, there is always a challenger that is also acting as an educator for leaderships. Every time biases are surfacing, every time the performance debate are going in directions that are not equal for all people, or equalitarian for all people, that is called out and corrected. The outcome, obviously, as well. That's one. And the other one probably I would like to call out is the leadership involvement and the goals every leader in the organization has to create that environment, which is measured in the results, but also in the outcome of the employee satisfaction surveys. So there are many other things, but probably those two are the most relevant ones. But again, what I want to emphasize is this is a continuous improvement effort. Things come over time.
It takes time and it takes persistence, right?
Exactly,
and
exactly.
The process you mentioned about performance is absolutely crucial, right? Hammering this need to be equal in the way you promote women and make them progress in the company, right?
Exactly.
The message, I think, is understood. Raj, what is the goal of Sanofi concerning women empowerment in STEM?
Thank you. I think it's really important that you get a tone that's very clear and set from the top. And at Sanofi, we have set ourselves a gender parity ambition of 50% of our senior leaders by 2025. And there are a number of things that we're doing to drive that forward. So, for example, we're aiming to ensure that every appointment or new hire is at least 50% women. Every succession plan is at least 50% women. So we have greater balance. And today, I'm pleased to say that we're just under 44% for our top 2,500 senior leaders across Sanofi worldwide. Thank you. I think one of the key things that you have to keep thinking about is what are all of the ways to make people feel included. And one of the things that we launched last year was parental leave. So at Sanofi, you get 14 weeks full pay from day one of joining Sanofi, whatever your configuration of family, for parental leave. And that's the first in our industry to keep it totally consistent across Sanofi worldwide. What's really interesting is that of all the men that have taken it, only 43% have taken the full 14 weeks. So we still have a lot more to do. And when you're asking the question why, the responses are, well, I don't want to miss out on an opportunity. I don't want to miss out on a promotion or a development assignment. So we are constantly trying to educate. And to your point, it's a conversation you have to have every day. I think the other big enabler for Sanofi is around our employee resource group. So we have a very clear goal that we've set, but it cannot just be done by the senior leadership of the organization. So we've created grassroots movements, and one of the biggest employee resource groups that we have is Gender Plus, and part of that we have a specific group around women in tech. And I think what that really demonstrates is our real push and drive to get to grassroots. So there are programs that are starting in January. One's regarding Empower Her, where we're going to schools and really helping educate what it's like to work in engineering. Sanofi has almost 40 manufacturing sites across the world, and we're really looking to ensure that those who support us in there are totally balanced. And equally, when we look at our women in digital, we're currently at just under 28%. Of our women in digital across Sanofi. And I thought that was relatively low until I spoke to people yesterday, and they thought, wow, that's quite high.
Yeah.
So again, it's also looking at how you can share some of these best practices. And we live in an environment of co-creation, co-ownership, co-development. So everything we build at Sanofi, we build with people around us who've got some of those lived experiences. So there'll never be a policy, a process, or practice that doesn't have some of the lived experiences and those voices as part of shaping the outcome that we're looking to do. So we're trying to avoid unintended consequences and minimize the bias that can creep in quite easily into some of those.
Well, great. Thanks a lot, Paraj. we see the importance of measures like parental leave, right, and grassroots processes. Now, Frédéric, let me turn to you. So increasing the percentage of women at all management level is a key priority for STM microelectronics. Some improvement actually have already shown. So now, how are you working at ST to reinforce the attractiveness of the industry and STEM careers towards women?
Thank you, Claudine. In fact, with fewer than 20% women in engineering school, it's key for a company like ST to really overcome the bias related to STEM studies and job. And I'm sorry, my voice is awful. It's not my normal voice. Our collective challenge is really to show every day that working in industry means developing product for a sustainable world. And I really want to insist on that to really attract men and young women to come to our industry. In fact, ST, we are a semiconductor company. We're making those little chips that you can find in every everyday object, in your phone, in your car, in your washing machine, in your air dryer, everywhere. And thanks to our chips, we make all those objects to become smarter, more connected, and energy efficient. So at ST, we're a little bit less women, and even if we work, when I heard the figures of my colleague around the table, we have 50,000 employees worldwide developing and manufacturing those chips, which 35% of women. So it's a little bit above the market average, and we know we have to continue to make a lot of progress. Last year in France, we have 13,000 people, and we hired last year exactly 1,472 persons, out of which 30% women. So we're making progress. We know that gender diversity, but as well as cultural, age, educational diversity are important factors for company performance. So let me give you just a few examples of things that we are doing. For instance, Women in Leadership program. I mean, most of us have those type of program. Since 2015, at ST, we already trained 600 women through this program. In 2021, we created what we call the Blossom Community. It's now include 25,000 female and male aged between 18 and 41. What is important here is really to give a voice to this new generation, and especially the young women, really to contribute to the company development, because you come with different ideas, and we want to make sure that those ideas are heard by the top management. We also have, an employee network, WISE, Women Inspiring, Supporting and Empowering. It's an inclusive space where women and men, we really insist that, it's always equality that can win. So together to address issues related to the place of women in the company. And then there is simple initiative. For instance, I always recommend to my colleague, other leader and executive, whenever they go to a site, please meet with women. Most of the time we are invisible, we are shy, but we are performing. So it's important that they can meet with them.
Absolutely. And you are so right to applaud to this point.
Yeah, and I have just one last, because again, we encourage women to go for some competition. In France, for instance, we have the Trophée des Femmes de l'Industrie or the Trophée des Ingénieurs du Futur. We're very lucky that we have great women within the company. Some of them won those trophies and they really become role model for the rest of the women in the company. So it's, necessary for equality, but also it's necessary for the success and the performance of the company.
Thanks. Yeah, but it might not be a matter of luck. It might be the result of a powerful policy that you're conducting also, right?
Correct.
John, CEO of Stack Infrastructure. So as mentioned in the introduction, we know that there is a leak in the pipeline, right? We have a STEM pipeline problem. And that women tend to abandon the field later on. Now, you have a very innovative approach to hold this problem. So can you tell us about how you work on that and how you work on retention of women all along their career?
Sure. So for many people don't understand or know what a data center is, and I think that's also a problem we try to address. I think one of the few positives to come out of the COVID pandemic is that people started to understand and realize that the world kept moving and that the world was able to work remotely. And that is because it's all underpinned from a data center. AI, cloud, none of these things exist without a data center. They all live within the data center facilities. So that's the first thing we're trying to do. And we have an issue as an industry. We're still nascent. We're 15 years old effectively as an industry. So there aren't clear paths to people to come in, and particularly there with women. And the large majority of our workforce is construction engineering. So again, historically very male-dominated environments. As a company, we've tried to address two issues that we see, and both of these are around culture. Because you can use compensation, and compensation can attract, compensation can retain, but it can rarely sustain. And you've got to tackle the issues at source. Why are we losing people? Why are we failing to attract people? Why are women not coming to the industry? Why are they not staying in it? And I think, by actually sitting down and speaking to women and understanding those issues, the key points that came out were culture, and by culture that was misogyny, a lack of development opportunity, and a lack of flexibility from an employer. And so we address those immediately. We have a zero-tolerance approach to misogyny, as should be the case everywhere. We have flexibility. Again, a woman's choice to have a child should not be an impediment to their career. And so there is a lot of flexibility around that. Only 2 weeks ago, one of my direct reports, who is currently on maternity leave, called me and said, I'm due back in January. Do you mind if I extend this until April? And would it be possible to still stay involved in the business somehow? So she's coming back full-time in April. She's going to do 2 days a week working from home. She can be flexible around those hours so that she can keep plugged into that. And her role remains the same, everything remains the same, and she comes back and plugs into the organization there. So that flexibility is key, and it's really important that women understand that their employer can build that around them, and that it shouldn't be a choice of one or the other. You can have both.
Absolutely.
I think then in terms of development of people, it's really easy for people like me to sit here and say, oh, we present the opportunity, we do this. Initiatives are easy to announce. Actually giving that opportunity and being able to give tangible examples of that, I think is a real game changer, and it's something we focus on. I'm a big proponent of promote from within, and having strong female leadership role models within the organization. And then for the younger generation coming through, they can look at these people, have those inspirational role models within the organization, and focus there. If we take the example of Alison, who won't mind me just give a little wave, as I have 10 of my very strong female leaders here with me today.
Hello.
But when I joined Stack in April 22, and I went round and met with everybody and sat down and I said, what do you want to do? And I sat down with Alison, who was at the time head of Marcoms in Italy, and she said, she was clearly very ambitious, but she said, I have a young daughter. I'd like to do both, but I don't think I can. And I said, well, yes, you can. And, we worked something out around that. Alison has now had 2 promotions. She currently sits on my executive management team. She's taken PMO and business management on, as well as Marcoms. So she's therefore an inspiration and a tangible example to everybody that comes into our organization. You can do both. You can progress as a female. And that's something we're very proud of.
I think it deserves applause. Well, thanks a lot for this additional presentation. So you see, we've reviewed some very, very powerful and meaningful policies regarding gender balances in the STEM industries, with keywords, key buzzwords, certification, flexibility, parental leave, visibility, networking, and performance processes. All these absolutely crucial. Now let's move to the other side of the problem, which is how do you hire, how do you attract younger women in these industries? So here I'm going to turn to Raj. Raj, Sanofi is a leading company in the health sector, as we all know, which actually de facto tends to attract more women. The health industry naturally attracts more women than other STEM sectors. Yet recent events, such as the last sanitary crisis, that may have actually eroded the motivation of younger generation, in particular women. So how do you address this issue to maintain and strengthen the attractiveness of Sanofi?
Look, first of all, we take nothing for granted, and building trust and confidence is an everyday opportunity for us in Sanofi. And in January of this year at Davos, we launched what we call 1 Million Conversations, which is our signature D&I commitment to the world outside to help build trust between marginalized communities and the healthcare industry. We've made a commitment of 50 million euros by 2030 to start bridging some of those gaps. And a big part of that is that we have introduced a specific scholarship, the Sanofi Next Gen Scholars, and we're taking 100 a year from across key markets around the world. And it's a telling statistic to say that 71% of those 100 scholars are women. And you know, when we speak to them about the opportunities that sit in healthcare and their careers, it's equally important for them to have an ambassadorial role to help share what it's like to work in Sanofi in healthcare. You know, and once they go through their scholarship, they then join Sanofi. And we have a number of programs. For example, we have a digital graduate program where we would bring them in. But not only, we have a number of programs that we're developing. So it's not just about providing scholarship. It's about giving them the support, the mentorship, and then integrating them into the organization. I think the second thing I would say is that earlier this year we went to One Young World and we asked 3 of our young scholars to join us, and there was a quote from one of our scholars, Chema, who's based in France, and she said, you know, the fact that we're all capable of doing big things, even on a small scale, makes a massive difference to the confidence that the next generation is bringing into the workplace. So as we're looking at how we maintain the capabilities that we're bringing in, it's really important that we listen to their voices, to their experiences, to their expectations, and we keep pivoting and changing because the world is always going to be changing far faster than we can, so we have to keep in pace with that.
Thanks, Raj. We understand that actually the bottom-up process, grassroots process is deeply rooted in Sanofi, thanks to your input. That's really great. Frédéric, could you share a success story regarding an action focused on attracting more young women to STEM jobs?
Yeah, I have more than one. So first of all, Raj, you mentioned before the important Personally, I'm a really true believer in this very complex economic and geopolitical world today, that working in ecosystem and partnership is very important. So I will give you a few examples. First of all, in educational, at the educational level, we need to encourage the kids starting at middle school level and even before, if we can, to study STEM. And so as a global leader in electronic, we believe we can make a very valuable contribution to bring the kids to the STEM. So we have a few things that we do. We have what we call STEM Your Way, program to raise awareness among young people about the importance of STEM and inspire them to explore STEM-related career. In 2022, 100,000 beneficiaries around the world. And then there is an important part of our program for schools in a project that started in 2021 with a startup called Vitascience. With Vitascience, we developed, and I brought one, I mean, I'm doing a little show and tell. We developed those type of kits. So here is one about a robot, but we have another one about connected a plant. And inside the kit, you can find a real ST microelectronic card, and within a week, the kids will be able to code and do their own, here the Martian robot, but the connected plant is another example. So we have those kits within middle school. Last year we had, well, this year we'll have 55 kids. It doesn't look a lot, and we'll be happy if there are teachers in this room or director of school come to see us. We'll be happy, you know, to work with you with Vitascience. And we also use those kits for the, in France we have des stages de troisième, so the
internships.
Yeah, they're coming, you know, in the company for 1 week, and so during 1 week they are able to do this. They leave the company with knowing how to code, and they have this little object that they are bringing home. So that's a really, really good example of what we do. Another thing which is more at the industry level, we are part of what we call the Software République. It's a group of 6 companies from the CAC 40. So you have Eviden, Renault, Orange, Thales, Dassault Systèmes, and ST Microelectronics. And we gather first to work on business issue, but after a few months we realized that we can also work on human resources issue. So putting together our knowledge, we are able to we have a talent factory, so we hire more. For instance, we're putting together a way that we can share a resume. I mean, always when you hire somebody, you have 2 top candidates, and it's always very difficult to choose which one you want to take. So at least one that you will not hire, you can push it back to our companies and have them possibly having a job. We do the same thing with the incubator. We do the same thing for people within our company, and then 40,000 of employees will be able to be trained. And finally, I have to say it, I'm the president of Industriel, which has been launched by Roland Lescure, relaunched by Roland Lescure because it started with Madame Pannier-Runacher a few years ago. And here, I will ask everybody who want to join the industry, please join us. We have a LinkedIn page that all of you can go. And through this LinkedIn page, we are organizing a mentorship program, ambassador program, and we hope that with that, more women can join the industry. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Frédéric. These are very inspiring examples. Thanks a lot. Turning to John Eland, Stack Infrastructure is a digital service provider which, as you highlighted, operates a new type of activities, providing customized digital infrastructures. It's actually an entirely new business, right? And the issue there is that actually university do not have the courses which are adjusted to what you need. So that's kind of a challenge to overcome. How do you address that issue?
Yeah, it's a huge issue. We've got a skills gap across the industry. It existed anyway, and now we're in a stage of hyper-growth driven by cloud computing and AI, driven pretty much by everybody in this room. Every time you pick up your phone, that drives the need for more data center capacity. So again, we took a look at this particular issue and said, right, the issue, we can't go and hire 1,000 experienced data center technicians or construction experts in Europe. They don't exist. Mm-hmm. So we can repurpose them, and we partner with CNET at the moment for a program to bring in people from outside the industry into critical facilities technician roles on engineering. But importantly, you've got to really engage at the schools level. And, coming in post-higher education doesn't really work because, again, someone's gone to university to do something different. And unfortunately, at the moment, very few people say, I'm going to go to university, and when I leave, I'm going into data centers, because there's no clear path to get there.
Right.
We have a high school program in Milan. We have 200 students a year coming in and engaged in and around all the activities in the data center facility. That results in 6 internships a year. That's not enough. We'll be driving that forward. We're rolling that program out to schools and education facilities in Oslo, in Stockholm, in Copenhagen. In Zurich, we're partnering with the GoTech STEM Lab as well to try and get young people in and around data centers to be interested in it and to let people know that there are opportunities there. And that's a key thing for us. How do you attract, and then to be able to use some of the fantastic role models we have here to show young women in particular that there is a path and a route into the data center industry. It's high growth, there's great career development, but the onus is on us as an industry and for us particularly as an organization to do better at that. I think in terms of the schools engagement, it's not just about speaking to pupils and to students and explaining it. We're trying to educate the teachers and the parents that are there as well so that there aren't negative influences around those career choices. And I think that's a critical thing. I talked earlier about culture within the company and the organization, but there's also societal culture issues depending which country you live in as well. And so in certain countries, it might be looked down upon. I want to go into engineering, I want to be in technology, but you're female. And that's a problem with society, and we can't change society overnight. But as an organization, we can provide a safe place and a development arena for those young women who want to come into the industry, pursue a career, and have that development path.
Well, thanks, John. Again, very innovative approach on the whole topic because it's a challenge, right, to create the talents for tomorrow. Now, Kathryn, from Bureau Veritas, you have some very inspiring examples of campaigns you've conducted to attract young women to these sectors. Can you present some of them to us, please?
Yes, I'll give you 2 concrete examples of specific campaigns that we've run within Bureau Veritas. I think the first one to share picks up on some of the topics that John outlined earlier, which is around misogyny, bias, gender stereotypes. So we have a lot of our engineers are working in field-based jobs, in large industrial sites, oil and gas installations, ships. And so actually there is part of the purpose of a particular campaign was not only to educate our male workforce about the fact that it is possible for women to do those roles, but also what some of the barriers that women may perceive about those roles that we can break down, and so that they can see that that's not the reality, particularly around flexibility of doing a field-based job in these type of environments, but also the physical nature of the job. And actually that shouldn't be a barrier for inclusion. So it was about education awareness of our existing population, but also to attract a higher number of female applicants into these type of roles. I think the other interesting campaign, which is my favourite to share, is that one of the things that we've identified is that it is a pipeline problem. So how do we inspire the next generation, and that we have to influence at a very early age? So we ran a campaign which was interviewing the children of female engineers within our organisation. So it was called My Mom is an Engineer. And really it was about listening and understanding from a child's perspective through their eyes, what is it that they see, they observe, or inspired about their mother in a technical and engineering job. And I think the beauty of this campaign is that it highlighted aspects that we probably wouldn't necessarily have identified ourselves. So it was, through a child's eyes.
So it was funny, you asked the kids actually what they thought about their moms, right? That's
what,
great.
What
It's
does
the
your
voice of the little kids who were mommy, we're engineers and so forth, and they were saying, well, my mom is.
Yes, exactly that. And I think what it highlighted is some important things. So one is, particularly because of what we do as an organisation, that engineering can have a social impact and that you can contribute more broadly to positive for society. So not just, working on, chipsets, but actually has a broader social impact. I think the most interesting one for me was about the children saw it as a route to financial independence for their mothers. So it was a way of enabling the family to do, nice holidays, to buy things, but the value of financial, as I say, financial independence came out really strongly from the children, as well as the interesting projects. It was very interesting, and we've used that video and that campaign in schools. So actually, you're more influenced by, what children say rather than just adults saying about a career in engineering.
Yeah, I would love to see that campaign, actually. So, Anabel, Diaz, at Uber, we know there are quite a few positions that are technical and require engineers and IT operators. So how do you ensure that a good percentage of women occupy these roles?
Yeah, indeed. At Uber, indeed, big proportion of our jobs are STEM. Data science, engineers, etc. And again, to my point before, you really need to work in all the initiatives that drive to that, diverse workplace. So particularly on recruitment, we started with the typical thing of implementing Rooney Rule and Mansfield Rule and putting these diverse panels, etc., etc. But it was frankly not yielding the results that we expected. It was not creating that system that pushes us to find the scarce talent, sometimes a scarce talent, women talent I'm referring to, in some countries, as you were mentioning before. Not all the countries have the same situation.
Absolutely.
And a lot of internal tensions, the process is delayed, we don't find the people, and many times we even found out that it was a tick in the box, just to be compliant. So we went more strict at it and more data-driven and created the new Mansfield Rule. Basically, we did an analysis per country and per function on what is achievable in every single market in terms of underrepresented candidates. And we defined specific targets that, again, we know are possible based on our data and our research. Right now, we target broadly 30% of the candidates that are being considered for leadership roles to be diverse or underrepresented communities. When we started, we could only meet 25% of the cases that target. Now it's almost 60%.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a great way to close the session, right? That kind of figures.
Yeah, indeed. And it is, again, my point before. You need to keep going, and the low-hanging fruit is over very soon, and you need to be perfecting the system. So another couple of very quick ones I do want to call out is, second is profiling our employees and showing to the world what it is to be a female engineer or, again, a diverse person working in the company. What's the type of person behind the LinkedIn profile? So our employees are voluntarily, but we are helping them, promoting themselves just to show and to inspire people that can identify themselves in that particular person with a similar background, with a similar history, with a similar education, etc., etc. But one last point I really want to call out, and I know it has been mentioned during the morning, is about encouraging and stimulating early the talent in the school. We know that the statistics at the universities are not going in the right direction, particularly for women, and it does start at school. I'm frankly being, shocked by seeing some of the numbers. And one initiative I have been personally involved for years by now is, I'm sure many of you know it, is Technovation, which is encouraging girls, again, to develop their own tools, etc., etc. I cannot express well enough how inspiring it is to provide that environment to girls to have interaction with technology, but in a way that they feel free to represent themselves as they like. If they want to do a presentation with dancing, music, they do it freely and they are not being judged, etc., etc. And with that, allowing them to see very early that it is compatible to be what you are and be participating in the technology. The reality is that if girls are excluding themselves from STEM and technology, they are excluding themselves from the future.
Right.
And right now, what we are doing is trying to bring that initiative also in the company and sponsor and support Technovation as a way also to, again, help early talent to find their way in STEM careers.
Well, thanks a lot, Anabel. I think that's a very powerful end for the session. And you didn't mention it, but we discussed before, and you mentioned the fact that you yourself, you commit, you go into schools in Spain all the time, even though you have a very, very heavy schedule, and that's admirable, because we need role models like you. We need people like you to go into the school and meet the teachers and meet the parents. And actually, this is how we'll end this session. If you want to meet some of these very inspiring role models, you will have a chance to do that. That will be actually in the networking space with speaker space. More positions would actually be given to you by MCC later on. And we look forward to see you there. Bye, and thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Claudia. What a stellar work. And thank you very much to the panelists for joining us. Let's give them the last round of applause.